Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, February 23rd, 2025. Now, today we are going to discuss a momentous subject, in my view, which is the second transhumanist children's book with illustrations that we are aware of. Of course, the first one was my children's book, Death is Wrong, which was published in 2013. Now, this was late 2013, November of that year, so a little more than 11 years ago. And I have been waiting for a long time for there to be a second transhumanist illustrated children's book, and now there is one. So we have our panel of Transhumanist Party officers today to discuss this. We have Daniel Tweed, who is our 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential candidate and Director of Community and Citizen Science. And we have Jason Geringer, who is our Legislative Director. Our guest of honor is an individual who will be familiar to our regular viewers because he is our Director of Visual Art, and he has been integral to making the Virtual Enlightenment Salon series a success. Art Ramon Garcia, he is the author of the second transhumanist children's book that I referenced. It is entitled When Everyone Chose to Live Longer and Create Art. So, Art Ramon, welcome, and please go ahead, tell us about the book. Tell us about the process, the inspiration, the multilingual aspects of it, anything you would like to inform our audience of.
Sorry. Well, thanks for having me. I knew that Gennady had created a children's book, and even knowing that all these years, it still did not trigger in my head that I should also make one. So that's what I kind of find kind of amazing or odd is what actually triggered me to actually want to create this children's book is flipping through TikTok, and that was one of the channels on TikTok. It was this Hispanic guy, and he was basically telling a story where I think he was sort of an intern, and he was working with some engineer somewhere, and they were telling him that Hispanic children are falling behind, and a reason for that was because there weren't any or sufficient number of children's books for Hispanics to kind of help them, think big. So that got me thinking, and I was like, well, I could do that, and I could do that about transhumanism. So, boom, just like that, in a matter of 5 minutes, I just kind of formulated the whole idea. I should do it, and then I've been using Canva for a while, and decided to use Canva, but I had to kind of get familiar a bit with how you publish on Kindle publishing with Amazon. So I did a little research with ChatGPT. It kind of led me to the Kindle publishing site, had to create an account and a few other things. I already had a author page because of the previous written work with Future Visions with the Omni Futurist. So I had the author page already, but I didn't have my own what do you call it, the bookshelf where you actually create the book. So went in there and started just filling in the information and become familiar with the way that works. So uh, then I kind of, it was a little different because this was a picture book. Okay. And that's one of the differences, say, between my book and the other transhumanist books. Yours is one, Gennady, that comes up with top results. I did find two more, but they're hard to find. They don't come up regularly in searches. They don't come up regularly in searches on Amazon. So there are two other books. One is an author that sort of does like a kid's version to explain many different areas, and one of them just happened to be about transhumanism. And it's a bit more like yours, where it has a lot more written text and it's meant for older kids. Whereas my picture book is targeted more for like elementary school kids, 5 to 10 is sort of what I'm targeting. So became familiar with that. I wasn't able to create directly from a Word file like I had uh, with my other work. So that kind of said I have to do this all by images. So I used Canva, and let me show that real quick. Here at Canva, I basically had to figure out the dimensions of the page I wanted to use and get that exactly because they will reject it if it's not exact. But this is where I started to sort of create the images and the narrative. Now, while I had this story, it was very loose. There was nothing solid in my head, and uh, that's one of the things I've sort of had problems with dealing with COVID. Is you have this brain fog, you can't focus straight, but you still have the ideas are there. It's just a matter of getting to the information. So what I had to do to bring this narrative to life is I first imagined the image. Okay, I'm opening the book. Here's the image, and I used ChatGPT to create the images. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I was able to accomplish this work within a span of 2 months, from initial concept idea to actually publishing the first ebook on Kindle. So it took me about 2 months using AI. And I remember the first image was I knew I saw this sort of planet from space, and then I got the idea of putting sort of a space station or a ring world space station around it, and I got put that into Chat GPT. It generated some images, and no, it was too photorealistic. It's not what I was looking for. So then I created a project within uh, Chat GPT, and let me show that. So I created a project, and I had several sub projects under here, and this is the first one. And I eventually had to sort of divide it because it was too much information within a project as I was generating, continue to generate images and the narrative. The story is mine. When I first put my first draft title, my first draft title was Day of the Dedicated to Continuous Living Creating Art, which was way too long. But I rolled with it for a while until maybe I was kind of halfway complete with the book. And then I said, hey, ChatGPT, it says, it's too long. Shorten this down and make it sound like a children's book. And it kind of gave me a few suggestions. And that's how I came to the current title. But within this long thread here of ChatGPT, I had images. Some, I didn't use all of them, but these are some of the first. Going back and forth with ChatGPT. Create another image depicting a bishop ring in the orbit around Nuuterrlandia. So didn't like that image. and this was a little too, sci-fi photorealistic. And I went through several iterations looking for the perfect image, and I eventually went with this one here. So it wasn't until I was able to get this image out that the narration popped into my head because it was in my head, but it's not something I could just sit down and write the manuscript. It sort of took a little back and forth of creating the image of what I saw in my head, then creating the narrative to fit it, and then in some pages I would have the narrative already in my head, and then I would just put that narrative or the narration into ChatGPT and say, create an image that suits this narration. So it was a little back and forth. And I eventually got these images, which I imported into Canva and modified them to fit the size. So this is the Altamente. This is the image I went for with when I had the hive mind in the book, Altamente. So yeah, that's kind of how I started that. And as far as you know, getting this information, I've had a lot of ideas over the years. Ideas like universal sign language, ideas of ultra terrestrials being of Neanderthal descent, and I just sort of got them, cobbled them together into the narration of the story. So there are a lot of unique elements that I haven't seen anywhere else because they're my unique ideas. So these are my unique ideas. I try to write the narration. It's mostly my narration. I try to think in terms of a children's book, using the vocabulary, of that particular age range. But even then, I wasn't satisfied with how the narration came out. And I went through and every single piece of narration, I basically had Chat GPT say, act like a children's book author and rewrite this so that it sounds like a children's book. And I went through and I had it rewrite everything I wrote so that it sounds like more like a children's book. So I said my idea, but I did have AI rewrite a lot of my stuff. So yeah, and with a combination of Chat GPT, then going back to Canva, uh, it slowly came out as an ebook first. And this is the English Spanish ebook, which I published on the 24th of December last year. So, yeah, and 2 months to create this book. And immediately after publishing that, I started to do other languages. What I wanted to do was concentrate on the languages here in the Americas. So here in the Americas, according to ChatGPT, it was going to be English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese were the main languages of the Americas. And then after that, I created those pairings of languages, the main ones, like Portuguese, Spanish, English, French, and so forth. After that, I wanted to tackle African languages, and I created 6 different pairings of African languages because I wanted to promote this, and especially in Africa, since I have a lot of contacts in Africa. I wanted to promote it there with a different languages, even though in a lot of countries there, English is the primary language. Still, I kind of saw it as a bit of an outreach, to do it in their languages. But I still had to whittle down the languages according to what ChatGPT was able to translate effectively. So even though I had ChatGPT say, give me a list of the most spoken languages in Africa, it would do that. And I would say, pair them together and whatever makes the most sense. And it would come up with a logic and how to pair these languages. But then I said, get rid of any ones that you cannot effectively translate. And it did get rid of some that it had already paired. So I had to shuffle them a bit around because it didn't have enough training in those particular languages in order to do an effective translation. So finished those translations, and then I started to do a bit of India, kind of South Asia, and I did like Hindi and Bengali, and I think another two. And then I was like, okay, let me start turning these into print versions of the book because these were all ebooks. And then I kind of ran into a problem with Kindle publishing. So with KDP, they have a restriction on the types of languages that are allowed, but they seem to be not so concerned with the restriction on the ebooks, but they are with the paperbacks. So all these versions I had in certain language, all of a sudden I couldn't make a print version of them. I was like, oh crap. I wasted time making the ebook and I can't make the print version because of these restrictions, which I didn't know that we're going to do until I actually went to do it. So I had no problem with the basic American languages, but when I started to do the African languages and the South Asian languages, I saw that problem. So I kind of switched gears, and instead I asked ChatGPT to look at the list of the languages that are allowed in Kindle, and then generate a new list of pairings or languages that I have not addressed yet and start with those. So the last one I'm working on right now is Chinese Italian. So I'm doing a Chinese Italian after having just finished a Japanese Polish version, which is on the list. But anyway, my throat's getting very dry. How about some questions?
All right. Thank you very much, Art Ramon, for that presentation and the insight into your creative process. We have a lot of favorable feedback for you from our audience. Our friend Alan Crowley writes, yay for Art Ramon, great book. And Corche writes, it's the exciting birth of a genre in terms of transhumanist children's books. I would actually be intrigued to learn more about the other two that you discovered, and perhaps we could share more information about them later on in this salon. Now, Jason noted that ChatGPT most likely uses DALL-E 3 to generate images, and that makes sense because both of these are platforms created by OpenAI. Now, let's get to a question from our friend Mike Lazine. Now, he did ask how long it took you to make the book, and you said 2 months. What programs did you use? And you explained that. So, is there anything additional that you would like to clarify in this about your process and how each of the programs contributed?
Yes. A lot of the images I was able to use directly without modifying. But as I got into the characters, okay, that's one thing that ChatGPT is just horrible at is you can't just create a character and say, okay, now put the same character in a different scene. It creates a whole new character. And that's where I had to use some photo editing. So photo editing with GIMP, I use GIMP to sort of copy out the character to put it into a different scene. I did that several times. Uh, Canva also has an ability to do something similar. So I was able to overlay images in Canva and kind of erase the background on an image and then overlay it with another image. And it did take a little bit of photo editing because at least right now, maybe the future might be different. ChatGPT Dolly just isn't able to generate the same character. And I think that's with all of them. I haven't seen any of the image generators. I even tried recently Grok 3 or Grok. I said, create an image of this woman. And I said, okay, now turn her hair blonde. It creates a whole new person, you know. It won't just modify what's there. So it creates a whole new person with blonde hair. I was like, no, no, that's not what I asked you. You know, you go back and I tried to word it several different ways. It just would not, you know, modify that original image that had like the person with the dark hair to make it blonde. It does not do that. So this is where it would take kind of photo editing skills to manually change that hair color. So I did have to use GIMP and some of the photo editing abilities of Canva. So Canva was my main program that I used to create the dimensions of the page. And that is important for when you upload your manuscript into KDP and you select a particular book size. So it has to be like a quarter, it's not quite a quarter, an eighth of an inch to the sides and a quarter of an inch to the top, I forget what it is, of trim. So because these are full page images, you have to have with bleed, they call it, so that they can cut it and there isn't any white borders anywhere. So they has to have that trim amount. And the first few tries, I mean, I failed 5 times. The first time with the ebook, even with the ebook, got rejected. So I was having problems even with that, even though the ebook was still a little bit easier than the print one. So the print one it had to trim things that I had to take into consideration. Canva has a margin feature, which if you allow the margins, it just shows little dotted lines. And if you stay within those margins, it'll pretty much pass the Kindle publisher test, the check that it does. Because it doesn't want any important information outside of their margins because it could get cut off. And especially if it's a book, the inner page, you know, if it's towards the inside of the spine, it's going to be hard to see if it's too close to the edge of the page. So you need that space, that margin space away from the spine. So you could probably get away with being closer to the edges on the top and bottom, but on the sides, because that page could end up being on the inside of the spine, either here or there, you want that margin space. So yeah, that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration. So yeah, that's those are the tools that I pretty much use to generate the images. And yes, ChatGPT does use Dolly, but with ChatGPT, it is I have that entire thread, so it keeps that memory. So once I told it to start doing it in a children's book style, it pretty much kept it. I didn't have to keep repeating that. So yeah, and you know, one of the issues I encountered, and some of the parts that someone tell me they might be a little gloomy or dark were, you know, I said there were world wars, and ChatGPT didn't want to generate an image that had war because I think it's trying to protect the kids or something. It actually gave me resistance. I was like, yeah, sanitize it then. And then finally, it gave me something close enough that kind of depicts World War. But it did fight me on a few things, and I wasn't going to look at the jailbreaks and anything. I was just like, you know, work with me here, you know. And so it was a little back and forth with ChatGPT. So all in all, I think it worked very well. Just going back and forth with ChatGPT, generating the images, helping it rewrite my narration, and some things definitely did very well. Concisely written, you know, very easily understandable. Some of my text would just be overly wordy, you know, and it would just make it very clear and succinct, and it was great that it could do that. And yeah. So, any more questions?
You
Yes.
said that Kindle didn't allow certain languages. Is that like an editorial or just a technical issue?
That they have a list of languages. Let's see if I could bring that up.
So yeah, I mentioned in chat about the consistent characters. They're getting better about that now. I think it has to do with the seed. Usually, it's set to random seed to generate this random number for the seed.
Okay.
But once you get your regular character you want, if you keep that same seed and tell it, use this seed every time, then I think it does.
Now, is that seed because of training, or you give it the seed so that it generates images from that initial image you upload?
I think it's to make it like random. So I'm not really sure. I'm no expert.
But that's interesting. If the AI stays with the same seed and modifies it, it may be possible to have some consistency there, versus each time when you ask the AI to generate a different image, it might be essentially re-rolling that seed and utilizing a different seed so the character will look somewhat different. And we have other comments in the chat about this as well. Super Fin Guy writes that Midjourney can also do that in terms of generating consistent characters. And Corche writes that Gemini will modify what's there, which is useful because it requires a lot of coaching to generate an intelligent image. So it may be worthwhile to experiment with those two platforms, Gemini and Midjourney, to see if consistent characters are possible. But I agree, this has been a limitation, at least in terms of ease of getting to that point of having a consistent character. And sometimes narratives that one creates based on AI generated imagery have to take that into account and be narratives that are more about, say, places or events rather than specific people shown in different situations.
So if you see here, these are the allowed language, or the supported languages with Kindle. Like I said, they seem to be very flexible with the ebook. They don't care if it's on here, but if it's a print book, they will check it against this list. So if you see there's no Russian. I've had tons of problems trying to get anything Russian published, and yeah, there's no Russian. They got Ukraine, but no Russian. I retried again. Being a picture book, I figured, well, maybe they won't check so well. They did check, so they've got some sort of AI checker that reads the languages, and if it sees Russian in there, it rejects it. So I had a Ukraine Russian translation, and it kept rejecting it. And finally, I just decided, yeah, they're not going to allow it because that Russian in there, and they eventually just blocked the entire draft. But I did create a Ukrainian German version, and that went through just fine. But yeah, these are the officially allowed languages. So basically, I could use these in any particular, primary or secondary, and it works just fine. I think I did an Afrikaans. Zulu print version. So Afrikaans was on here. I think it is.
Kind of sorry to see Esperanto didn't make the list. That being synthetic languages, which are kind of transhumanist. Maybe Klingon would be cool to have, since I think that's got a huge speaking community. But I was going to ask you also, is KDP Kindle Publishing really the big dog in the room? There aren't a lot of runners up for people that want to publish electronically.
Oh, it's the only place I've bought ebooks. So,
Yeah.
I haven't bought any ebooks anywhere else but Amazon. So to me, it is the big dog in the room because I haven't myself bought anywhere else. So I don't even know. I've heard from people that I should publish somewhere else because Amazon can be very restrictive at times. They can cancel your account if you do something wrong, and their support isn't the greatest. They kind of outsource a help desk to India or something, and they're really by the book. You can't really have a conversation with them. They're just going to say rejected because of this, and this vagueness, and you just have to kind of interpret what you did wrong from there. But yeah, it's dealing with them can be difficult, but as long as you stay within the boundaries they kind of set up for you, you won't have too many problems. I have heard a lot of horror stories, like on Reddit, of people having their whole entire account blocked because they did something that Kindle publishing didn't like. So, are there other ones? I don't know. I've heard there are, but I don't go there, so I'm probably not going to go there unless I have to.
Yes, it's unfortunate that the Russian language is blocked on Kindle direct publishing. I do think that decision is purely political because, as I've noted in the chat, there is a paperback edition of the Russian translation of Death is Wrong available on Amazon, and it's still available, but it was published in 2014 before the escalation, at least, of the conflict in Ukraine. And Mike Lezine did write that Putin has made the Russian language toxic to many, sadly. I don't think Putin made it toxic. Of course, Putin has done some toxic things, but the anti-Russian backlash in the West, to the extent that it has extended to culture, to language, to historical figures that were long dead before the invasion of Ukraine, that is just a bizarre kind of ethnic prejudice, and it is unfortunate. I do think there has been a thawing recently, and with the, let's say, pressure on certain social media platforms to eliminate various forms of censorship, I wouldn't be surprised if politicized restrictions on language will also diminish, at least in the near future.
If he was against, the trying to get rid of the Ukrainian language, then how can you not be against trying to get rid of the Russian language? It's the same thing. It's wrong,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, we should have as many books available in as many languages as possible to reach people, and that's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of digital versions as well, which have a zero marginal cost of production. So I am really fascinated by this premise of having each book in a pair of languages, so that somebody who may be a native speaker of one language but trying to learn another, whichever those two languages are, and a Russian-Ukrainian pair is a great example because there are actually people in Ukraine who have spoken Russian for a very long time, but they want to learn Ukrainian. And this book could help them. This book could help their children as well. Why deny them that ability? So
I can't help but notice there's kind of a sweet irony in that the internet was originally a command and control protocol to route around damage caused in a nuclear war. So the internet actually treats censorship as damage and routes around it, which is a beautiful thing. So I hope we can keep the anti-censorship mechanisms of the internet alive and well.
Yes, indeed. And Daniel, you asked with regard to the Russian version of Death is Wrong, whether that's an electronic version or a paperback version. So the one that's on Amazon is a paperback version only, but the one that is available on my website, The Rational Argumentator, in PDF format, as well as EPUB and Mobi, which are Kindle-specific formats, is an electronic version, and it is compatible with Kindle readers. I just decided to make those electronic versions available for free because that's the way to make them accessible to Russian-speaking audiences. So thank you for that question. And we do have various other questions as well. So Mike Lazine asks, have you messed around with the current Adobe Photoshop CC? It has integrated AI in it now that is way ahead of what it was when Mike was last using it. I know you have some thoughts on this, Art Ramon.
Yes, I wasn't using Photoshop. I was using Adobe Express. I created the first cover for Future Visions with Adobe Express, and I was using that. I had a subscription in order to get to the advanced fonts, and yeah. But then I heard they made some sort of change to their terms and conditions where they could use any of your work that's on their servers, on the cloud with them. So that pissed off a lot of creators, and a lot of creators left because a lot of that built-in AI generation is also being trained on people's work. So it's not just stuff off the internet; it's also your work in development. They're training it off of. So a lot of creators left Amazon, and yeah, I eventually decided to leave Amazon too. So I did have that one piece of work with the first cover of Future Visions that sort of stuck on there. But if I have to reactivate it to get to a copy, I don't need to, but I've already got plenty of copies of it. But yeah, I went over to Canva, and Canva has a lot of the same features that Adobe Express had. And um, yeah, I like it. I think I heard people say, Mike say that it also does video. I haven't tried it for video. I've been mostly using CapCut for video, doing little promotional type videos for the book.
Yes, thank you for that answer, and great question, Mike. Elaine Walker observes that she uses GIMP all the time, so you are not alone in that, Art Ramon. And she also thinks that that image of Altamente would make a great album cover for a musical album. And speaking of images, images that you have generated that didn't make it into the book, they may still be worthwhile to publish online, even just in Facebook or Instagram posts as standalone images to drive interest to the book or to show another, let's say, imagined version of some of the settings that comprise the book. What do you think of that possibility?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, I kind of did do that with the cover. The cover and the few following pages. Let me see. These were variations. So these were variations of some of my artwork. So I actually uploaded my Germinator painting, photo of my Germinator painting, and I said, turn this into a children's book cover. So this is what ChatGPT did. This is one of the images, and it did several variations. And this is how I kind of reused them, was to put it behind the dedication and the first few pages, the copyright, whatnot. So yes, I could reuse the other images that were not used in the book I do have some. In the book, one of the characters are the Niñis, sorry, but so the Niñis, which was a term I sort of made up, kind of a Spanish term, rather than niño or niña being female or male. I was like, I'm gonna do it like Niñi, so that way it's not it's not a gendered word, but actually Niñi, just Nini, actually does have a definition in certain Spanish countries. I think it's like young people who loaf around and do nothing. But Niñi is what I called the characters in my book, were the young kids who have not yet received their BCI, their brain computer interface, because it is set in the future. So it's set in the future, an alternate future, and they all train. Usually they go to school, they learn art, they learn USL. That's one of the premises I put into the narrative. So it would develop their mind so that it would be highly visual, so that when they get the BCI, they could communicate quickly with images. So it would be similar to what I suggested a long time ago on one of our salons, universal thought language. So I put that into the narrative also, of where we can use sort of generative AI to create that image. You think about something, it creates that image and sends it to the other person so they quickly see what you're talking about, whether it's a turtle swimming through a pond. Boom, that image is quickly launched over to the other side. So you can speak in images rather than have to speak in words, which is very serial, whereas an image is parallel. You have all those different elements coming all at once. So that's how being visual communication would be faster in certain instances. So, and I imagine that in this future that I depict here in the book, where visual communication is important for being connected to the hive mind. So
I could add a comment on that, Art. I think octopi actually do this among each other. They have chromatophores that generate animated patterns on their skin. So when two octopi are communicating, they're doing what you're talking about. They're like instantly turning their thoughts into animated visual images for each other.
Yeah, and humans are visual communicators. When you see people's facial expressions, micro expressions, we are visual communicators first, and verbal second. So we have our eyes have a direct connection to the brain, whereas our ears don't. So we are visual communicators first, and in certain instances, I think it is superior form of communication, just like memes are. Memes can be very good at getting that message across, just in a simple little image, just cartoonish looking image. So yeah, that's something I'm sort of promoting in a way, advocating for, is that a lot of this BCI, eventually this communication with the hive mind, is going to be visual.
But how would you keep from thinking bad thoughts and displaying them? That might be, there has to be some kind of edit function, doesn't there?
You need to have a gateway of some sort to prevent anything from being transmitted unless you want it to be transmitted. Just like if, for instance, you want to send a voice message to someone, you record that message first and you click the send button. Or if you want to send an email to someone, you compose the email, you click the send button. So there should be the equivalent of being able to compose a thought and then decide to submit it. And the decision process has to be something very specific, not just, oh, I happen to be thinking this thought right now, or I feel this very strongly. No, it doesn't get transmitted unless you do some specific thing that you wouldn't do in any other context and you wouldn't do accidentally. That's my thinking. But what is your thinking, Art Ramon?
I'm thinking that's where the AI, your own AI, is going to fit in. It's going to be that filter. So it's going to be able to quickly ascertain whether what you're thinking is meant for yourself or for somebody else. So that's what I envision.
Of course, it would prevent lying if you just instantly, got your whatever was on your mind transmitted. And people might say, "Oh, yeah, well, we understand that sometimes, spurious thoughts get out." But yeah, someone once said language was invented to lie with. I think so. There's pluses and minuses to everything, I suppose.
Well, but without language, you don't even know if somebody is being honest with you regarding their intentions. All you see are outward behaviors, but how do they fit into some sort of pattern, or what can you expect from that individual? That becomes even harder to distinguish, and therefore it becomes harder to tell friend from foe without some explicit signaling of intentions. So
are you thinking of Art? Are you thinking of doing any nonfiction books? Like, I think this would be a great format to do, like children's science books. Speaking as a community science guy, and I think there probably is a genre already for teaching children about science. But I hope you might use your universe and art skills in that direction as well.
What I have seen is not so much in a picture book. So I could probably tackle one particular area as a picture book. Maybe that's something I could think about. But right now I am focused on this particular book. It is a soft cover because there are page limits. I have to get up to 79 pages before I can go to hardcover. So this is kind of a magazine style, kind of like anime books. Some of the Japanese anime books are magazine size. So that's the kind of the typical anime style size book, magazine type. A lot of children's books are square. Originally, when I did the research, it was supposed to be a square, like 8.5 by 8.5, but I didn't meet the page limit. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the hardcover square one. And then because of the margin requirements, it does get, the particular one I made as an ebook was a square format, but it wouldn't pass because of the margins. So I would have to shrink things down in order to get it as, if I did meet the page limit, as a hardcover, a square one. So I have had to modify. So this format was modified from the square images I had in the ebook. And Canva has a feature where you can expand an image. So it'll use AI to fill in areas if the image is too small. So, and I did use that a lot when I made this particular form. So,
could you do a coloring book, like with just one click? Also, maybe that's a good low hanging fruit, low effort thing for the next.
For this particular book, I used the high premium glossy color. So this is probably too slick for. I'd have to maybe see what the regular paper is, the texture and the pounds to see if it's suitable. But yeah, that's a thought. Do something a bit more interactive as a coloring book.
Did you include any like Easter eggs in there, like word kind of thing?
There are plenty of Easter eggs in here because as part of my community outreach to the Hispanic community here in the United States, I put a lot of references that Hispanics would understand. Like the accordion, the accordion and my character, President Accordion, which I took inspiration from certain individuals. So these are kind of like Easter eggs that Hispanics would sort of get. Granted, other cultures around the planet may not get it, but at least they'll find it interesting, the accordion and whatnot. So yeah.
Another thing you could do is include like a quiz, and then teachers could use it for like comprehension, like ask questions about the content or something. That might be a way to get more traction in the children's market.
I've got a lot of Easter eggs. I've got a lot of mysteries in there too. I mean, this is for when I could turn this into a cartoon or a movie. I can expand on those mysteries I kind of left hanging. So I didn't define every single term. Like at the very beginning, I mentioned the date being after technological singularity, but I didn't define that there in any way because either they get it, they understand it from context, or they'll just have to ask an AI. Like my parents, I gave them a copy of this book, and anything they didn't understand, they just asked Alexa, and Alexa does a good job at explaining things. So, if a kid doesn't understand it, well, they're going to have to ask mom and dad or ask AI, if they really want to understand what it's saying, or they could just sort of get the gist of it and move on.
Yeah. So an activity or workbook. I had another question. You said 2 months, which is again a really impressive, short time frame to put out work of such quality. And I wonder how much of that was like learning curve time. You probably knew GIMP, the famous open source graphic image manipulation program that's been around forever. But what kind of learning curve did you have on Canva and other stuff?
Definitely doing the trim stuff was a bit of a learning curve, so that I hadn't had to do before. And the trim on the print versions was a learning curve. But yeah, it did take me 2 months for that first ebook. Once I had that template down, I was easily able to create a copy of it and then just paste in other languages in the areas where the text is at. So it made it much easier to produce the other versions. And it did take me a while to create the print version. But again, same thing. Once I have a template, create copy, and then just rename it, and then start replacing the text and with the other languages. So it definitely makes it easier to turn out more copies. And one of the things that having multiple languages does is that it gives you a lot of search results when you're looking on Amazon. So I can sort of show that. If you're on Amazon and you just search for transhumanism, you're going to get a lot of books in transhumanism. And you scroll through. Oh, there's mine. Right there.
Oh yeah. The only is death wrong on there? Or do you get to death is wrong in that search?
Actually, that one doesn't come up because Gennady doesn't have transhumanist in the title. So
search engine optimization
to get full optimization, I had to put transhumanist and transhumanism in the title. So I kind of extended the this one doesn't have it, but I extended the subtitle with transhumanism to have that as a optimization to come up in the searches. So on page 2, here's the ebook, the English-Spanish ebook. And here's the English-French. And here's the English-Portuguese.
And those all get separate ISBN numbers, I take it, right?
Actually, the ebooks do not require an ISBN, but the print ones do. But yeah, they do come up as a different, a separate search result. It is considered a separate work.
And ISBN is International Standard Book Number, not to throw acronyms
if you
around.
search for transhumanist, I get second result as transhumanist. So Natasha's book comes up first. They've got more reviews than I do. But for some reason, I'm able to get second search result if you just search for transhumanist. So yeah, here's another one on the first page. So 2 on the first page. Here's another one on the second page. 3 already. 3. So here's my other book. So I'm able to get good ranking just by the title, having transhumanist and transhumanism in the title or subtitle in order to get top ranking. Even with the few book sales I've had, which isn't as much as some of these other ones here, who've got a lot more sales than I do, yet I'm able to get up there.
You've got a character universe. How many characters are in the art character universe?
Yeah, I don't know, but I've got several characters in the book in this one here, and yeah, I could see who's the first one. Well, the most important character, of course, is this one here, and that's Lunabella 1717, and her origin story is in here. So I kind of, the way the narrative developed in my head, I wasn't able to have it fully formed. I just kind of had to slowly get bits of it out, and it had me going into this alternate future where the sort of robotic AI with a holographic skin that can morph into whatever is sort of telling a story in the future to the Niñis, who are basically training or in class. And it goes into the past, their particular past, and tells the story of how the things came about. So, and like I said, I do draw inspiration from our world, but it is an alternate universe. So, yeah.
Quite fascinating. And Alan Crowley writes, let's give Art Ramon some more reviews. I agree with that. And it's also fascinating that using the term transhumanism or transhumanist in the title of a book can boost it. There has been a long ongoing discussion within the transhumanist community about whether to continue to use the term transhumanism, and I, of course, am firmly on the side of using it. Hence, this organization is called the Transhumanist Party, and our members are staunchly on the side of using it as well. Hence, this is the name that was upheld during our vote on the question in 2020. So the workings of sites like Amazon and I would presume other platforms that spread content do favor content that does utilize the term transhumanism. So Daniel writes, by the way, there's a free Kindle trial deal to get the book, so take advantage of it if and when you can. And Jason asks, so the main character is an AI. Would that be a fair description, Art Ramon?
Yes, I would say it's an AI. It's a self-contained AI within a robotic form, but it is able to connect to the hive mind also, along with everyone else. Say BCI. So, yeah.
Yes, indeed. And
do you think you'll get? Oh, sorry. I was just thought of a question about. I wonder, will this get pushback from like I don't know, hardcore religious types, or have you thought about any communities that might give you heartburn about your your content?
Yes, definitely. I expect some pushback and negative reviews eventually once it gets more attention. But I'm gonna say, hey, man, you got Donald Trump and Elon. Come on, really? Are you gonna really be against transhumanist BCIs when the person you're following is in league with Elon, who's pushing for it. I mean, I don't think the argument's going to get very far because you could easily show them how one way or another it's going to happen. You know, no need to say it's the mark of the beast, because barcodes used to be the mark of the beast. You know, used to be this thing. You know, oh, here's the mark of the beast, my barcode. So I'm familiar with the religious ideology, and even I'm concerned because I don't want to be forced to do anything I don't want to do. Because that's one of the things I promote in the book is freedom to choose. You know, it's when everyone chose, to live longer, not when everyone was forced to live longer and create art. So that's one of the ideas I do push in the book. It's in there. Just if you read along, it's about choice. People are going to choose to do this, and if they don't, well, they don't. No one's going to force you. So eventually, I assume I'll get some kickback from people like who wrote Dark Eon. That guy, I think Natasha had a debate with him one time, the author of Dark Eon. But so far, no negative reviews. So if you get my book, please write a review, because it'll help counteract any of those negative ones. Because I think anyone who has Kindle can read my book, the Kindle Unlimited. So anyone can read the book as an ebook with Kindle Unlimited. So that means someone who doesn't like some of the concepts of transhumanism that I have in a book could easily write a negative review. So if you have read my book, please write a favorable review so I can counteract any negative ones. And I also chose to promote and advocate the T word, which is why I made a double capital T. Just so that there was no confusion that it's the T word. And I did that with as many of the language translations as I could. Not all the language translations I was able to do that, but a lot of them I was. Once I started going through a lot of the translations, I started to recognize the characters in different languages. It's like, that's the T there. They sometimes transliterate the word, so I was able to see that what particular character was the T, and also make it a capital T on both. So and like I said, I wasn't hiding it. I'm putting it in everyone's face. It's a transhumanist children's story. So yeah, wanted to make sure it was loud and apparent.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Jason.
That's good.
Yes,
I mean,
it is good.
Transhumanist, the word transhumanist is kind of... Sorry, I'm breaking up. I'll just shut up.
Well, go ahead and put your comment in writing and we will read it out. But I agree that using the word transhumanist so openly will widen the Overton window to encompass transhumanism. And that's extremely important. So now we have some comments as well about the appearance of the book. Elaine Walker writes, it looks really high quality, and Mike Lazine agrees. He says, Amazon did a pretty good job with publishing and printing Art Ramon's book. And Carlos Nato writes, it's really beautiful. Alan Crowley writes that he has a copy of Art Ramon's book. It's wonderfully colorful and tactile, a beautiful book. So thank you to all of the viewers who wrote these words of praise. And indeed, this is content for reviews that you can include. So Daniel also recommends to ask your library to carry it. And that's another way in which to help to spread it. Corshey notes it's fascinating all of the new creative processes that have been spawned by generative AI. So perhaps, Art Ramon, you could comment on how using all of these various generative AI platforms has affected your creative thinking and the pathways that you are able and willing to explore.
I said I'm an artist, but I'm more of a traditional artist. I haven't made too many digital works other than memes. I've created some memes, but yeah, this allowed me to quickly generate all sorts of images, you know. And had I tried to do this myself, it would have taken me years, you know, especially right now we're dealing with COVID brain fog and it sapping my energy. But uh, but yeah, it would have taken me years. Or if I had to hire someone, a professional, children's illustrator, it would have cost me too much money, and I probably wouldn't be able to make it back in sales. So it's tough. It's like, did I take the job away from a children's illustrator? Well, I don't want to be broke. you know, I'm not gonna get $5,000 in debt and not get it back in sales. A children's illustrator, the children's illustrator could make his own books, so it's not like he's losing out. He's going to be able to use AI to create his own books. Any illustrator out there. So I'm not an illustrator like this style, but I can leverage AI in order to create the illustrations. It's still a bit problematic. It said creating the same character. Yes, it seems to be improving. Sort of suggestions made, and I assume it will improve in the future enough so that I can turn this into a cartoon. I'm gonna turn this into a cartoon and put it on my YouTube channel, and then also make a more serious movie version of it. So, and either I can do it all by myself, and then eventually, if it's good enough, I can get approached by a professional movie maker and have it turn into a more serious project. So yeah.
I'm kind of curious about something too. What if I wanted to print out a Lunabella 1717 action figure for my desktop? Are you going to license the SPL files, or does Amazon handle merchandise licensing?
I don't know. I don't have anything built right now, but I guess that's something I could do in the future. But it's first got to get this guy selling first. This is the first step.
I assume you've reserved all the merchandising rights and other kinds of rights.
I've reserved. This is not open source. It's not open source. I reserve the rights to everything, and down the road, I'm gonna expand on this. But right now, like this is a good tool. I mean, I encourage people to buy one for yourself and buy one for somebody else or your library and donate a few. I've tried to keep the cost as low as possible. It's like barely $1 profit from each one. So it's not like I'm making a ton of money. It's just that's what it costs for the publishing, the printing cost. So, and then Amazon wants their share too. They want some profit. So, it's the cost is as minimal as possible. I did send 4 copies in various languages to Kelvin in Nigeria, and the cost was like $25 a piece. It cost me to send it to him because of the shipping costs to Nigeria and the duty fees and whatever else they tack onto it. But here, you should be able to get this for like, I don't know, $13 or so if you have free shipping with Amazon Prime. So I have it listed, I think $9.99 is what I have this listed at. I think here in the US, I have other of the translations in other markets. So those are priced a little bit differently depending on their currency. but I just kind of played around with the different markets depending on the language. But you could buy any one of them still here in the States. All of these 4 that I printed, I think 2 were here in the U.S. market. I think 1 was in the UK, but they were all printed here in the U.S. and they were shipped to Nigeria from here. So I'm still waiting for some photos from Kelvin, where he's giving it to his students to read. But
you could always use the direct action route and just sneak it on into a children's library. See how long it takes for the librarians to say, "Hey, this is not an approved book."
Yeah. Well, what I told Kelvin, I was like, you need to use this as a tool to go out and to lend it out after his students have read it, lend it out to other schools and make connections with other teachers at other schools. And that way you can spread transhumanism, the philosophy, by networking, by lending it out. So I think it'd be a valuable educational recruiting tool to be used by lending it out to other schools. So that's what I encouraged him to do after his students have read it. So
is the copy on the spine very legible? Like if it's on a bookshelf, what does it look like? If
no, there has to be the hardcover.
Okay, the soft covers don't have
any. Soft cover doesn't have it, and it has. This is about, I think, 49 pages. To get to the hardcover, I have to have 79 pages. So yeah, that's where I have to decide how I'm gonna do that. I was thinking of maybe making a transhumanist, U.S. Transhumanist Party version, where we could put some of our information in it at the end of it, to kind of use as a recruiting tool. So it would be both, because I said I got a lot of pages to fill. So I could sort of do that, but it's going to increase the price. That's the thing. It's more pages, hardcover will increase the price. So maybe we could do a smaller version. I'm looking into making the 6x9 version, that one, of this, to see what it looks like. If it's too small, so I'm going to make a prototype and see what it looks like. And if it looks good, it's something where we can put information from the U.S. Transhumanist Party at the very end, and it shouldn't increase the cost too much, and it should be a bit cheaper because it's a smaller form factor. So then we can use that to hand out, versus the idea we had of doing those little flyers. Remember, they had the flyers, because those were pretty expensive too. That was like $9 or something. It was expensive when I looked into the price on Zazzle one time to do those like 3-fold, cards. So it'd be cheaper just to do a whole book, in certain cases, and we could put our kind of recruiting material at the end of it. So I'm looking into that.
How do you feel about fan fiction? People writing stories with your universe? Are you open to that?
Well, I can't stop anyone from doing it, but if people are doing fan fiction, I guess it's getting out there. But it's my idea. I did leverage current events in this universe, so it's not like it's completely unique. I am leveraging, but you have to do that to make it relatable. If it's too different, people can't connect to it. It's too foreign a thought. So I do make it relatable. But I did put in my ideas of the pine cone, which I've had that idea in my head for the longest time, about the pine cone DNA being archival, an archive for information from past civilizations. So that's in part of the narration of the book, part of the theme. So yeah, it's my ideas that I haven't seen anyone else suggest that. Usually when people see the pine cone symbolism in ancient artifacts, they usually say it's your pineal gland, you know, not that there's, you know, archival information in the DNA of the pine cone.
I would say it looks ripe for a video game or computer game spinoff too.
Yeah, it's if it catches on, it could go in a lot of directions. But right now, it's kind of just stick with the book, keep marketing the book, market it as best as possible, and encourage people to get a copy and get a few extra ones to lend out, and you know, they could use that to connect with other people and spread transhumanism. So yeah.
Indeed. And Jason also points out, if people are doing fan fiction, that kind of means you made it to where you want to be, because that means the book is getting attention and it means that people are aware of it. Jason also says it is a good idea to use the word transhumanist. This was the comment he was trying to make. The word transhumanist is controversial, but he thinks we should just own it. And indeed, we should, considering especially the search results you showed, where I'd say the majority of the books had some sort of negative portrayal of transhumanism. I think we need to change that. I think we need to actively shape that perception by coming out there with the word transhumanism and transhumanist and explaining to people what it means, so that our critics do not have the predominant role of characterizing and mischaracterizing it. As Carlos Nato wrote, a person who wears clothes or uses glasses is a transhumanist. They just don't think about it in that way yet, and we can help guide them to that conclusion. Alan notes tool making is transhumanist as well, and he used your last capital T in it. So thank you, Alan. Now, Mike Lazine has a question with regard to the copyright status of AI. Can you copyright AI generated art? My understanding is the US Supreme Court ruled that the outputs of the generative AI platforms themselves are not capable of being copyrighted, but if you modify them, if you use some sort of human creativity or some sort of human alteration to them, then you can copyright that result. So if you put text on an AI generated image and you put that text in some sort of creative design, as you've done in your book, then you can copyright that. You could copyright that page. If someone were to find the raw file of the image that you generated initially to put into the book, they might be able to use that. But I don't even know if they would have access to it unless you put it out there first. But what are your thoughts on this question, Art Ramon?
Yeah, I'd say anyone, there's no need to copy. Come up with an idea and just go for it. There's really no reason to copy my work. You take inspiration from my work, come up with a unique idea, and go out and create your own book on transhumanism. I mean, it's easy. I mean, if I could do it in 2 months, anyone could do it. I mean, we could flood the market with lots of transhumanist picture books and really get the message out there. I mean, I easily did it with just a few variations in language in the search results. So if other people are doing what I'm doing, you know, don't copy my work, just take inspiration from it, come up with your own narrative. You know, any ideas you have that are unique, weave it into your narrative and create your own book and put it out there and spread the word and go ahead and use the double capital T for transhumanist. Spread that, you know, so that there's no mistaking what it is.
Yes, indeed. And I would say, with generative AI being essentially at everybody's fingertips, you can create imagery and the styles that you like with the content that you wish to include. Sometimes you might need to experiment, for instance, with matters like creating consistent characters, but it can be done. And then it can be something that very directly represents your vision. So thank you for that answer. And also, Mike is praising the gender neutral aspect of the term Niñis. He says it's supportive of non-binary individuals, but it's also supportive of robots because some of the children, the Niñis, are actually robots per the illustrations. So it would be difficult to attribute a gender to a robot. There's really no need for them to have one. So the term Niñis would encompass them as well. Is this one reason for your motivation for using it, Art Ramon?
Yes, it's the whole gender debate thing. Like a lot of the Hispanic community were trying to create a Latinx, which I thought was kind of silly. I was like, if you want to make it gender neutral, just say Latin.
Exactly. Or say Hispanic.
Yeah. So they wanted to create this Latinx. It's like, So I made the word niños, niñas, gender neutral just by saying niñis, just creating a whole new word because, it is an alternate future. It's an alternate reality. So I can do whatever the hell I want, so yeah.
Indeed. And we just got a super chat in from our friend Alan Crowley. He writes, "Thank you for encouraging everyone to make their own transhumanist book with 2 capital T's. That is an important lesson from this salon." And indeed, the possibilities have really opened up with generative AI, as many of us have emphasized. Also, Daniel has a good message. The USTP is the anti-entropy party. So we can emphasize that as well in our communications. So now we have some comments from Carlos Nato. He says, "Congratulations for the book. This was a worthy subject." And he writes that my book, Death is Wrong, was very nice too. He and his associates are constructing a library, so hopefully that library will hold both books and other transhumanist books that characterize transhumanism in the right ways. And John H. notes, better start buying paper books again. If you have an old-fashioned book library, cherish it. And there was some discussion in the chat about the immutability of printed books, so somebody can't remotely delete them, for instance. And this would be quite valuable given that even in the time that the internet has been in existence, so roughly 34, 35 years, a lot of content from the early internet has disappeared. Even a lot of books that were previously available in electronic format or a lot of PDFs are not downloadable anymore. And that is a tragedy because that is highly valuable content that should have been preserved in some fashion. And I think it is a good practice given sufficient time, and I know time is a severe constraint for many, but if one has the opportunity to take any piece of writing and create hardcover versions of it, such as a book compilation that could also be published through Amazon, that would increase the chances of that piece of writing being preserved. So buying hard copy books is, I would say, a good practice, and especially for children's books, because many children don't have access to digital devices for one reason or another. Sometimes it's because their parents don't let them. Sometimes it's because their families don't buy devices for children. And having hard copies enables children to very easily access a piece of content and look through it, look at the pictures, dwell on the pictures if they so wish. That's why Death is Wrong not only was published in hard copy versions in 5 different languages, but I hosted a fundraiser on Indiegogo in 2014 to distribute 1,029 hard copies of Death is Wrong to children from 14 different countries. So thank you, John, for that commentary. And hopefully now it will be even easier to get these hard copies printed and distributed. Mike Lazine also is curious how Leonardo AI would be with consistent characters. I know Jason has had some experience using Leonardo AI, so maybe, Jason, if you could write some of your observations in the YouTube chat, that would be helpful. Mike furthermore writes, he likes my thinking on preserving the images that didn't make it into the book. Let nothing go to waste. Thank you, Mike. And he also says Art Ramon is right on the money in regard to when people text the meaning of what you are saying, that can be taken the wrong way or misconstrued. This is in the context of the discussion about images and direct visual communication. It's often said that a picture can be worth 1,000 words, and being able to transmit that is, of course, extremely valuable. This is why we value visual art as well. It can transmit the artist's intentions, the artist's worldview in ways that a text alone might not be able to do. But of course, with traditional artistic creation, it's very time consuming. So the artist has to be very selective about which impressions to convey, which impressions to spend sometimes months of time on in order to relate to the outside world. Now, here's a comment by Alan that might be interesting to consider, and maybe you have your own thoughts on it, Art Ramon. Alan writes that even negative reviews are, quote, good reviews in regard to the algorithm. Perhaps some algorithms at least see a negative review as engagement and perhaps see the book as being sufficiently noteworthy to be controversial and could elevate it. But I don't know how Amazon's algorithm works. If somebody says, well, this book is terrible, do they mean it's terrible because they disagree with the content, or do they mean it's terrible because it's low quality in their view? And how would an algorithm respond to that characterization? But I wonder what you know about the Amazon algorithm, and if we do have some detractors who review the book negatively, how do you think it would affect its ranking?
From what I've seen on the Reddit threads, it does negatively affect book sales. So how, I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard other authors say, that somebody wrote a negative review and all of a sudden they're selling a lot less books. So that's coming from other authors on Amazon in the Reddit threads. So yeah, try to have as many positive, encourage your readers, who support you to go out and create a favorable review to try to cancel out any negative ones. So yeah.
And one advantage of us being in the transhumanist community is that we do have a lot of people who are sympathetic with our vision, who should be able to generate positive reviews. So I would echo that request. If you've read the book, if you've purchased the book and you like it, please review it favorably. Mike Lazine wonders, what software are you looking at for turning your books into cartoons or movies going forward?
Right now, I've tried some of the Sora software, but it just creates very short snippets of video. It kind of takes it in weird directions that you don't really direct it. I think it's not there yet. Maybe in a couple years, it'll be there. But right now, it's not there yet. I've been mostly using it to make little short promotional type videos that I put on YouTube, or I put on Facebook or X. Just promotional, quick little promotional videos with sound. I've created a few in the past, so I kind of have a template, and then I update the template if I create any new videos from it. But right now it's not there. But you know, in 5 years it might be commonplace. You know, say here's my book. Turn it into cartoon. Turn it into a kid's cartoon. Turn it into a more adult themed cartoon. Turn it into a movie. You know, turn it any variation you'll be able to turn it into. So yeah, I could turn it into an anime style, book. So yeah, I'm sure that in the future I'll be able to take it in a lot of different directions. Right now, I don't think the software is there yet. It costs me too much just to make a few seconds of video. You have to buy the credits and whatnot. You only have so many free credits with the paid subscription of ChatGPT I have now to create that sort of video. And then you have to pay for more. So very short little snippets of video that I haven't really played around with trying to direct it, but it still kind of seems to go where it wants to go. You don't have much control over it.
Right. Short snippets are what I have seen online, and it's interesting. Sometimes with creative curation, it's possible to generate longer videos that are successions of shorter snippets. Like on Instagram, there's an account, I have no affiliation with it, called Sci-Fi Scapes, and essentially the creator there generates images and video animations of futuristic cityscapes, like advanced megastructures that could be built several thousand years hence, but the videos only have a few seconds in a particular scene, and then they shift to a different scene. And he has generated enough scenes in a consistent style that it looks very immersive. But one has to be creative in that way. One still can't spend like 20 seconds in a single scene. But there are some programs that are being recommended. Jason writes InVideo is a good one, and LTX Studio does this too. Jason is saving a list of programs that might be able to generate videos convincingly. He says he will connect you with that list that he has for whole movies after the salon. So thank you, Jason. And Mike also mentions that he found an AI animator online, but it was buggy based on the text prompt that he used. So thank you, everyone, for that feedback. And Mike also thinks if someone like Steve Aoki, who is a popular EDM musician and a life extension supporter, by the way, if he got a copy of Art Ramon's book, he would give a great review and might even make a song inspired by the book. And again, inspiration is excellent. You know, if somebody used a reference to the Luna Bella AI in a song or a poem, Art Ramon, hopefully you wouldn't mind something like that. It would mean that awareness is spreading.
Yep.
Excellent.
Probably a Creative Commons, just to credit the creator, kind of is the traditional way to do Creative Commons, like reuse it with credit, non-commercially. But I did have a question for you, Art. Would you describe your book as like, maybe the most optimistic vision of the singularity? I mean, I know you got people being paid for their art, by aliens, and there's all kind. I don't want to give away too much, but robots came up earlier, and I love that the word robot was a Czech word meaning forced labor. Robota came, and it was actually a famous story by a science fiction writer, Rossum's Universal Robots, and But yeah, I mean, making art and getting paid to make art is as far away as you can get from forced labor, wouldn't you say? I mean, this is like the very most anti-dystopian version of the post-singularity future. Am I on base with?
Oh, that's how I envision this alternate future. I did get some feedback from some people that it was too scary, but I was like, oh, uh, I don't see that scary. I was trying to sort of tackle kind of the Hispanic cultural fascination with Day of the Dead, and kind of put a twist on it so that turn into Day of Be Happy You're Living, sort of. So the original title, the Day of the Dedicated, that was a kind of a play on Day of the Dead. So a few of the kind of Easter eggs are involving that. Sort of me tackling how to change up Day of the Dead, and because I think eventually, I mean, if the Day of the Dead here in where I live in Tucson, it's a big celebration. Day of the Dead. I mean, they have big marches down the street, so it's a very big culturally. And what does that become when no one is dying anymore? Once nobody has a grandfather that's died, when your grandfather's still alive, your great grandfather's still alive, there is no more significance to Day of the Dead celebration. So eventually, that kind of cultural celebration just goes away. I think it needs to evolve at least, turn into something else. So that I'm sort of tackling that in the book, maybe a little bit foreshadowing. What does Day of the Dead become when no one's dying? It's going to have to evolve into something else. So some of the war. When I mentioned the war, I don't think that's scary for kids. I remember when I was a kid watching TV of war and not really understanding what war is, and it was all Quiet on the Western Front was the movie, I think, where the guy's reaching out for the butterfly and gets shot. And I remember watching that movie when I was a kid, and before I understood what war was. So it's that's kind of burned in my memory. The guy reaching out for the butterfly. So it's pretty tame, I think. The negative references, but I do reference the economic singularity, and I reference the technological singularity, and I reference BCIs, and I reference longevity. So I've got a lot of transhumanist topics buried in that book. I mean, it's all about it. So I don't know of any other book doing that. I know Gennadi's book tackles death. That's I think you went into some history in your book, Gennadi. But I don't think you tackled you didn't do other transhumanist BCIs or technological singularity. Am I correct?
Well, I did discuss some possibilities for technological progress, like space exploration, development of orbital colonies or colonies on other worlds. But there is a segment actually about my introduction to war as a child, and I'll read from it. It is fairly brief. It reads, "As I started to read history books and watch films, it did not take me long to find out that most people did not survive to age 100, and that, yes, even children could die. May 9th, 1992 was celebrated as Victory Day, the 47th anniversary of the Soviet Union's defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. All the television stations showed old historical films, including images of Nazi persecution of Russian civilians when the war began in 1941. I learned that the Nazis shot and hanged millions of innocent people. I found out that in addition to dying of old age, people could be killed, and no one was invulnerable. The old Soviet films showed that some of the, quote, heroes who fought back against the Nazis were younger than 15 years old. Some of these child soldiers were made to suffer horribly before they were killed, but apparently they did not betray their motherland. They were praised without limit for having given their lives for their country, but to me, what happened to them was just sad. They should have tried to escape and live as long as they could, I thought. There was no glory in death and no point in it. So I do speak about my own introduction to war as a child, and I read extensively about historical wars. I played with toy soldiers as well. So I don't think it's that unusual or something to be avoided for children to learn about war at those young ages. War is a part of reality and it is a part of human history, and children need to develop an understanding of it, an understanding of what it means, and hopefully a desire to prevent it from happening, which definitely was imprinted in me from a young age, given what I learned about World War II and other wars which have had horrors and tragedies and human deaths and suffering in them as well. So I don't think that the characterization of world wars in your book, Art Ramon, should be off-putting to kids at all. I think it's part of their learning experience. I think it's a necessary component, and I'm glad you overcame the resistance from ChatGPT to putting that content in there. Now, Mike Lazine writes that in terms of the Day of the Dead, it may be reappropriated as celebrating those who have died and cannot be brought back. So maybe not one's immediate ancestors, but people who have already died, historical figures, for example, who at the very least would be a lot harder to revive. There are some transhumanists who have espoused ideas about quantum archaeology, for instance, and of course the Russian cosmos with Nikolai Fyodorov have articulated a view that everybody who has ever existed should at some point be revived, and we should develop the technologies to do that. But it would be an extremely protracted process, to say the least, and the theory behind it is not well developed at all yet. So thank you, Mike, for that observation. But I do think it's worthwhile to consider, how could holidays like that change when death is no longer so ubiquitous, when people whom one has known throughout one's life are not dying, and therefore the celebrations would transform into something else. So Jason writes, interestingly, wow, learning about World War II from the Soviet perspective as a kid must have been rough. The Eastern Front was particularly brutal. Yes, I was told in very direct terms about 1/4 of the people who lived in Belarus died during World War II. So it was a particularly harsh experience for the Western regions of the Soviet Union that were overrun initially by the Nazis. Daniel writes, The Physics of Immortality by Frank Tipler addresses universal resurrection of the dead as compatible with physics. And indeed, this is an early proto-transhumanist text, I would say, and worth looking into for those who see eventual resurrection as a goal. So thank you for all of those comments.
I would say what a loss of innocence that to learn about death as is for any child. I think they learn about death and then they learn the universe is actively trying to kill them in many ways, you know. But if you had had a book like Art's before you learned about death and the horrors of war, I wonder if it might have spurred you on. Well, I mean, you already took your realizations and made a great life from them. But it's a speculative question, but I know there are books out there that try to broach the subject of death with children. And I guess that's what you were trying to do with your book, Gennady.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
How big is that topic of children's books about death? I wonder if there's probably like a half dozen, I'm thinking at least.
There are some, but none of them, other than the ones that we have discussed here, are of the transhumanist persuasion trying to get kids to fight death. A lot of them are more about like consolation or death acceptance, or it's sad but it happens. But I don't think that's particularly helpful, especially for children with my personality or the personalities of many who become transhumanists and life extensionists. So I would definitely encourage the creation of additional children's books along these lines. Art Ramon, if you could tell us more about the other two that you learned of, I think that would be helpful for those who are interested in exploring them.
Let me see.
By the way, it looks like Amazon isn't allowing reviews of your book yet, according to
Really?
France. He
Okay.
tried to review them.
I found one of them. Let me paste the link in a private chat here. I could probably just share this directly. Okay. This is the other one I found. Z.B. Tucker, he actually writes on several different topics, and just this happened to be one of them. You can read the sample here.
And this is a children's book, The Race for Immortality?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit older kids.
Young adult.
It's more like Gennadi's book than mine. So, yeah, this is just a few pages from. Is it on? Oh, it is on Kindle. Okay. Device would be added. I'm not sure if I can show the whole thing on here, but this is the other book that I found. And there's another one I found, but I'm not sure if I found it on Amazon Market. I think I might have found it somewhere on the internet. So, but I did find two others. This is one of them. So there are at least sort of 4 transhumanist themed children's books. So, yeah.
Very interesting. The Race for Immortality, it was published fairly recently in March 2024, so less than a year ago. It's not surprising that I hadn't been aware of it, but I will definitely look into it and see what ways it portrays the pursuit of life extension in, based on the imagery and text so far. I am optimistic about this particular book. Now, I am also curious, Art Ramon, how many languages in total have you translated the book into thus far?
Right now, I have a total of 20 different languages. They're all languages that ChatGPT said that it could effectively translate. So they should be good translations. Francois did find an error in the French version. It was a tiny error. I think it was the gendered version of the word was incorrect. But I kind of put that as a disclaimer at the front of the book. It goes, "Hey, I'm using ChatGPT. It works good enough, and if there's an error, well, you'll get the general concept of the idea, even if it's not a correct translation." So I don't think it's gonna stop anyone from understanding what's going on in the narrative, even if there is a mistranslation. But yeah, I've been very happy. I mean, I can read the Spanish version, and the Spanish version was fine. I could sort of read the Portuguese version, and things looked like it flowed well. So yeah, I'm kind of trusting ChatGPT for the translations, and yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's perfectly fine. Uh, Anyone, like I said, it's part of outreach. Some of the language pairings that I'm doing now are a bit kind of odd. I don't want to make everything in English. It's like the uh, Japanese Italian version, or the Polish, what was it, the Chinese Polish version I made. So they're really odd pairings, but it's to me it's to encourage multiculturalism, but it doesn't all have to be Anglo. It's just worldwide multiculturalism. Uh, so yeah, I didn't make everything in English / some other language. I did vary the language pairings, and right now I'm sort of doing it from the advice of ChatGPT based on that language list. So my strategy's changed a bit. So, but yeah, I've got the top languages. I think I still have to do it. Oh, I have a Chinese Italian version. I think I'm not completed with yet. So, still working on that one.
Oh, do you want to talk about the tech that's on your head there, Art? Is that something that we could know about?
Well, we could do. Yeah, this is a neo-rhythm. So it's post magnetic stimulation. So it's supposed to help your frontal cortex. I don't know. I've been wearing it for a while to help me focus, I think. And otherwise I'm just relying on coffee for focus. Otherwise I have trouble finding the words sometimes if I'm not really well rested or I'm too tired. The brain just doesn't work correctly. So I'm going to be using this from now on. This is one you just wear, and it is sending a magnetic stimulus into the brain area, which hopefully helps activate it. I've been playing around with several brain devices lately. This is one you can wear passively. The other ones you kind of need to put them on and do a training regimen with the app. But this one you could just passively put it on. I'm also got another one on order, which is a vagus nerve stimulator. You wear it around your neck. It puts like little electrical pulses on your vagus nerve to help you calm down and get out of that, the sympathetic mode, fight or flight sympathetic mode, calm you down into parasympathetic. That way you can think clearer rather than having the racing thoughts. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of electromedicine, which has been very heavily suppressed by big allopathic pharma, et cetera, in the last 100 years. But yeah, I think it's making a comeback.
I'm waiting for a direct current stimulation device. There's a company called Lifted, but they kind of took it off the market as they're redesigning it. So I'll probably get one of those devices with current stimulation, electrical stimulation versus magnetic pulse. So I would try several. There's one that also uses 40 megahertz light. Supposedly it's able to get light to your brain and stimulate your brain cells. I'll try anything right now since I'm not doing my hyperbaric oxygen therapy and code plunging that I was doing, which kind of stopped working. So I decided to try something else.
Can we get a link to the where to get one?
Sure.
What's the
name?
Yes, and in the meantime, since our time for the salon is unfortunately coming to an end, I would just encourage the continued development of the genre of transhumanist children's books. I think what Art Ramon is doing is an excellent contribution, and for people to purchase the book, for people to write positive reviews. Here is the link to the book on Amazon, and one can also find Art Ramon's author page on Amazon. This is a great gift, as Carlos Nato pointed out, for holidays or just to children whom one knows. And I hope that this is the kind of book that can help us get to a world where we can all live long and prosper.